China's most successful emperors often did the most unbelievable things. Qin Shi Huang unified 6 kingdoms, then sent expeditions across the sea to find the elixir of life. Wudi opened the Silk Road, then kept the rotating caste of mystics and alchemists at court. Tang Taizong launched the golden age of the Tang Dynasty, then spent his final years swallowing alchemical pills. Emperor Jiajing skipped court for over 20 years to focus entirely on Daoist alchemy. And Yongzheng, the most hardworking emperor of the Qing dynasty, secretly kept a group of Daoist monks in his imperial garden. This sounds like superstition, but if you look closely, you realize this was not stupidity at all. These men were not fools. They knew that everyone dies, but what they truly believed was never about living forever. What they believed was this: if anyone could push past the limits of nature and live a little longer, that person should be them. The problem was never here. The real problem was, why did no one ever tell them this is impossible? Qin Shi Huang is the most misunderstood case. Many people assume he believed in immortality out of ignorance. But if you stand in his position, it actually makes perfect sense. He accomplished what no one before him ever had: unifying the known world, building a new system, reshaping the entire order of civilization. When you have already broken through one impossible, it's hard not to wonder, can I break through another? If I can conquer 6 kingdoms, why can't I try to conquer time? So he sent Su Fu across the ocean with thousands of men and a fortune in treasure to search for the legendary elixir. The result, we all know: Su Fu never came back. But the key to this story is not that the emperor was deceived. The emperor didn't need to believe in immortality. He only needed to want it. And the moment he wanted it, someone would always step forward to tell him it can be done. By the time of Wudi, this was no longer just an experiment. It had become a system. The mystic Li Xiaojun claimed he had met immortals and was given a position at court. Luan was even more outrageous. He claimed he could communicate with gods. Within a short time, he was made a general, given a noble title, and even married a princess, a street-level conman. In just a few years, gained more power and wealth than most people could earn in a lifetime. How? Not through ability, through telling the emperor exactly what he wanted to hear. Of course, Luan was eventually exposed and executed, but the moment he was gone, someone else stepped right in. Why? Because the market was too big. As long as the question still existed, the game would never end. By the Tang Dynasty, this problem became far more dangerous. Tang Taizong took alchemical pills in his later years. His cause of death remains suspicious. After him, Emperor Jiajing, Emperor Muzong, and Emperor Wuzong all likely died from the same thing: elixir poisoning. In nearly 300 years of Tang history, at least 6 emperors are believed to have been killed by their own longevity medicine. That's roughly 1 emperor every 50 years, killed by the very thing he hoped would save him. 1 emperor had just been poisoned to death. The next emperor kept taking the pills. This sounds absurd, but if you shift your perspective to the system itself, everything becomes perfectly logical. The alchemists would never say this is poison, because the moment they did, they would lose everything. Ministers would rarely say, "Your Majesty, please stop," because the cost of honest advice could be their own lives. In this system, the problem was never whether anyone knew the truth. The problem was whether the person who spoke the truth could survive. Once someone publicly admitted the elixir was toxic, it would mean admitting that the previous emperors had died from their own foolishness, and that would shake the very foundation of imperial authority. So, the safest choice was never to speak the truth. It was to stay silent, or even to keep playing along. In this environment, the silence was no longer a choice. It was instinct. Truth was not being hidden. Truth was being actively avoided. Under Emperor Jiajing, this logic reached its extreme. He refused to hold court for over 20 years, devoting himself entirely to Daoist alchemy. He ordered his officials to write Qin Shi for him, a type of prayer text. Whoever wrote the best prayers got promoted. And so, the criteria for talent selection in an entire empire began to shift. It was no longer about governing ability. It was about who was best at supporting the emperor's personal beliefs. Yongzheng held power for 20 years, and one of the key reasons was simply that he wrote the best prayers. Meanwhile, Daoist monks formed a stable interest group around the emperor. They performed rituals, offered explanations, and hope, and in return received power, wealth, and even influence over state policy. Those monks could affect official appointments and political decisions. One emperor's personal hobby had become the operating rules of an entire empire. The emperor's belief was no longer just a belief. It was an institution. When one person's delusion becomes the operating rules of an entire system, it is no longer one person's problem. It is the system's problem. If the previous examples still allow you the comfort of thinking that was just ancient superstition, Yongzheng will shatter that comfort entirely. He was one of the most diligent and rational emperors in Qing history. He reviewed documents deep into the night, every night. His approach to governance was meticulous and disciplined. And yet, this same man, in his later years, secretly kept Daoist monks to brew elixirs. He certainly knew about the failures before him, but here is what he would have thought. They failed because their methods were wrong, but I have better resources, more reliable people. I can do it better. This is exactly where it becomes most dangerous. The more rational you are, the more capable you are, the more easily you convince yourself that you can be the exception. And this kind of a mistake doesn't only happen to emperors. The moment a person starts to believe others couldn't do it, but I can, they are already walking the same path. Over 2,000 years, these emperors appeared to be chasing immortality, but what they were really chasing was the same thing. I'm not like ordinary people. If anyone can break through the limits, it should be me. But these thoughts never appeared out of thin air. They were amplified, little by little, by the environment around them. When everyone around you keeps saying yes, it becomes very hard to believe that any answer could be no. Most of the time, the problem is not whether anyone knows the truth. The problem is that the entire system makes the mistake look more reasonable. The truly frightening thing is not that one person develops a delusion. It is that the entire system helps him maintain it. Perhaps the greatest danger of power is not that it makes people worse. It is that it makes people believe they can be the exception. This is not a problem of history. This is what happens when human nature meets the structure of power. When no one around a person dares to say no, making a fatal mistake is no longer a question of if, only a question of when. And by the time it happens, it is almost always too late.